everyone, and welcome back to Feenix Films Presents DIY Filmmaking. We were on hiatus for a little bit, taking care of some nitty-gritty behind the scenes, and we are back with a very special episode for the holiday season. This will be a two-part episode, so stay tuned for the second part next week. We have, for the very first time, a guest on our show. His name is Christopher Ryan. Chris has been working on and off with Feenix for a number of years in many capacities, and he himself is a writer of some renown. And so what we'd like to do for starters is to hand it off to Chris, have him do a little bit of bio of himself and what he's done with Feenix, and then we'll do a little bit of a question and answer session. And please feel free later on, once you've watched, to add any additional questions you have below the video. Okay, so Chris, why don't you introduce yourself?
All right, I'm Chris Ryan. I'm predominantly a novelist. I've done the City series, City of Sin, City of Woe, City of Pain, and I'm about to launch into City of Love. Those are crime dramas, but they are also they follow the three-part Divine Comedy from Dante Alighieri. I started out writing in high school and college. I was a crime reporter in the Bronx for about 8 years, crime and politics, but in the Bronx, that's usually the same thing. And we used to do body counts on the front page, like 12 dead, 27 wounded every week. So I saw a lot of action. I teach now, and I write books, and I've done a little bit of acting, and that's how I got to meet Dave. And Dave and I started talking about what he was doing while we were building the asylum for Cuckoo's Nest. And that's when I found out that you guys had an independent thing happening. And I had said, well, listen, if there's anything I can do to help, especially with the writing. And Dave eventually called me back, and we started doing, we were going to be doing shorts for little short films, we thought, and then that became Lock, Load, Love. And I've managed to be around for most of the projects, or a lot of the projects, ever since. So there's a couple other things in my bio, but that gives you an idea of what's happening.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Chris. Welcome. Yeah, so since you kind of talked a little bit about making the connection with Feenix through Dave, why don't we have you start off with a couple of questions, or however you want to engage with the guest.
All right. So I think let me look at my notes here. For a question I think is interesting is what got you. You told us a little bit about it in your intro, but what got you into writing? What made you decide to go from like the newspaper to writing the fiction?
All right. Actually, I have something for you here. I dug it up out of the bookcase. I have the actual thing that made me want to be a writer. I was just a wee lad, and I read this book right here.
Oh.
There it is. That's the actual copy I read in like 7th grade of S.E. Hinton's The Outsiders. And it's all yellowed, and God, it smells fantastic. And when I finished reading this book, I went out and I got a notebook, and I proceeded to completely plagiarize S.E. Hinton's The Outsiders. And I filled up the notebook with, we changed the names a little bit, but it was very similar to what that was. And while that notebook just stayed what it was, it gave me the idea, people do this. This doesn't come out of the ether somewhere. So I've been doing some kind of imaginary work or some kind of work with fiction ever since then, whether it's comic books or writing, or for a while I was going to be a rock star. I wrote lyrics, all that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
That's great. That's an awesome book. I remember.
Yeah.
I remember seeing the movie first and loving the movie, and then reading the book in junior high and realizing how amazing the book was.
Oh yeah, and I was in Target today, just a few short hours ago, and I happened to be in the very sparse book aisles they have, and there was a brand new printing of S.E. Hinton's The Outsiders. So it's still on the shelves, it's still being put out. That made me feel really good.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
So,
that's great.
so there you go.
Cool. Kate, you want to ask a question about writing?
Yeah, Chris, I am a fan of your books, as we all are in Phoenix. You mentioned your history in, the media. Is there anything else that really inspired you to write primarily about crime?
Well, yeah, I got those books here too. There's all the City of Woes, City of Pains. The actual story behind that, I come from a family of cops, and I do have a crime reporter's background. But what really made me want to write these books was my high school senior English class. I teach Dante's Inferno every year, and the kids love the concepts. They jump in there and they want to make the decisions of which sins should go where and all that. But they also always trip up on the language and the aging text. So I wanted a way in for them, and that evolved into, well, a modern novel. How could you retell Dante's Inferno, Dante's Purgatorio, and Paradiso in a modern setting? I needed characters that could go anywhere. Especially in the Inferno part, there were going to be some grisly scenes. Well, the people who are going to have access to that, who are going to have agency there, would be police. So that's when I went towards, okay, how about that setting? And because of my crime reporting, and because of my background with my family, my father, my brother, cousins, all being NYPD police officers, that chose the setting for me, and then it's come up pretty easily since then. But I do have a secret weapon, and I suggest this to all creatives. Since I'm writing in that world, and Kate, you'll be able to verify this because you used your pop on this, I have a retired NYPD sergeant who I give a draft to after I've kind of knocked it into shape and I've had it beta read and proofread a couple of times. Then I send it to him, and he kicks my ass on anything that a cop wouldn't do, or this, and gives it a lot more reality and veracity. And I think you have to go through that if you're really interested in your craft and in serving the story. You have to find people who know more than you and put it through the mill.
I have a question, too, about the two characters, Mallory and Gunnar. And this is something, too, that I think I noticed just in the shorts that you wrote for Lockload Love, which is a very different genre, of course. But do you find that, I mean, sort of, do you find that you use opposites a lot in a sense?
Yeah. I learned that from Neil Simon. Neil, I did a lot of. He has a biography, and he talks about kind of like play to play. And one of his things was, just give me two opposite characters in a room, and I'll give you a play. That idea fascinated me, and then I think I read 10 or 12 of his plays in a row to see what he was talking about. And yep, that's what he does. So I try to get opposites and then let them, put them in proximity and see what happens. For Gunnar and Mallory, they're different sides of me, and spiced with other people I know, so that they could bang off each other. And I needed two characters because if we're going to go on Dante's journey, Dante had Virgil, right? This was, by the way, something that I could not convince super agent. We were talking about Donald Moss before. I couldn't convince him that this was worthwhile. This was a deal breaker for him. He didn't want to see a buddy book. He is sick of cop buddies running around in novels. I tried to explain to him, Dante's Inferno it can't be a solo run. It didn't work out. But you know, so yeah, give me the opposites and I can write. I do that. That was very easy in the Lock, Load, Love. Whether we did the take on who's on first, or the scene that you and I did, where it was the father rather than the guy you were waiting for. That was a series of bad dates for those of you who want to go and research Lock, Load, Love. Yeah, the idea is just to put opposites together and let them play.
Yeah, and just a quick note, since Chris mentioned it, if you do want to research Lock, Load, Love, you can find all of the individual dates on Funny or Die. If you search for Lock, Load, Love and Feenix, Feenix, then they'll all pop up.
And it's, by the way, Nick, it's beautiful to see how many people have found those scenes. The numbers are pretty good right now. And then David mentioned that to me. I went over to check, and yeah, look at that. It's more than just me and Mom.
Yeah, when we first put those up, it was like, you could tell how many of our friends and family watched it, because it was like 100, 200 views.
Yeah.
And then, 6 some odd years later, and we're up to 8,000, 10,000, I think, in some instances, of people who have viewed it. So it's pretty cool.
And more are welcome. Come on and see.
We're going to be doing a podcast on all of our projects too, so we'll be able to.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
The evolution of Feenix Films.
Yeah. I think Janine had a question, Chris, for you.
Yes.
Janine, if you want to take it, dude.
I guess, so, like, when you're, sitting down and, getting ready to write, like, what's the process for you? Like, do you write for hours and stop?
If you allow me to lean over, for a minute, I'll show you the process.
Nothing rude.
Where did you go?
Oh.
What's that? Index cards.
Index cards. I carry index cards around when I'm going through the planning sessions or the brainstorming sessions, and they go as follows. You get an idea. Trying to show you a good example. Maybe over here. You get an idea on the front, and that's just the main idea, and then
a little higher.
Yeah, a little higher.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you can.
That's good.
You can kind of see it,
Yep.
and then on the other side, the line side, you can write as many things as you want. Lines of dialogue, action. You have to embrace. Let it suck. It doesn't make a difference. The index cards are never getting published. Just write ideas down. The idea is to get a big pile of them, more than you're going to use, and then you get up. I get up before my wife all the time, and we'll have a nice cup of tea, and I'll spread them out on the floor, and then I start putting them together in different order. I learned that from David Bowie. David Bowie used to write couplets that really didn't have anything to do with each other, and he'd clip them up and he'd throw them and then pick them up randomly and see if they worked for a verse. So I would put these in order until I got them to kind of a loose 3-act structure that seemed to make sense. And then that's when I started polishing. By the way, you're about to see a guest star. There he goes. Hey. So that's my managing editor, making sure I'm still working. That's the world famous Silvio. So we get a 3-act structure, or a structure that seems to make sense, and then from there I can just put those to the side and write from those a rough draft. And the idea with the rough draft, again, is to let it suck. I know I'm going to do 6 or 8 rewrites.
Like 100, let's say, hypothetically, index cards, let's say that were, and then from all of those index cards, then you'll kind of make a rough draft of that.
Yeah.
Through, and then do your edits.
Yeah, and then we're going to do, I think for City of Woe, I did 10 rewrites. For City of Pain, I did 6. And Genius High, probably 6 or 8. The last 3 of those were expensive because I had already employed my layout person and graphic designer, And then I kept freaking out and saying, this has to get fixed. So the bill went up a little higher than I had wanted, but it is what it is. So you have to serve the story.
That's I think that kind of is a nice leads me into another question, which is obviously when you write something, it can become very personal. And having you and I co-wrote Lockload Love. I think you wrote most of you ended up writing most of the dates or scenes. How do you handle it when something that's so personal to you, you then have a director come in, an evil director, and the director says, yeah, you know what, I don't like this doesn't flow, and they start to kind of mold or try to mold something. How do you, I think that's something all writers probably struggle with, and how do you deal with that?
Well, I mean, probably 15 years ago, I wouldn't have been as good at it as I am now, or whatever. It's a learning curve, and I think that I got lucky in doing that project with you. It built off. I wrote 30 sketches for the South Soul Comedy Troupe. I'm not sure if you can find them guys on the internet anymore. That was head up by Rich Ramirez, who unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago. But I would write for them after speaking and kind of talking it out. And when they got to trust me, I would go to rehearsals, and we would literally throw an idea out, and they would improv it, and I would take notes and then give the script. And it was an evolving process. And then we would nail down the script, and whenever we nailed down the script, Rich Ramirez would say what I wrote. But this other guy, Herb Quinones, I'm not sure if he ever read the script more than once. And he would improv, even on stage. He was a great risk taker, and it always got funnier, you know. So when it's succeeding, you don't question it. So by the time I got to you in Lockload Love, I had some experience with improv. And then with yours, when we did the scripts with you, you would kick them back and forth. So when you were filming, for me, it was like salsa. It was, okay, now what are they going to do? I do want to say something about Feenix Films, though. I've been lucky enough to watch you evolve. Lockload Love, you routinely, Dave, turn to me and say, you got any other ideas, while we were filming a scene or whatever. Nikki Newark, I maybe made 2 or 3 suggestions. But by the time we got to Clandestine, everybody knew exactly what they were doing. And for me, it's the evolution and the growth of Feenix Films, but also you were getting more adventurous early on. Clandestine, far darker, more evolved thematically and script-wise. So by the time we got to set, the baby was well formed, and it's been really a fascinating creative experience to watch the growth of Feenix Films. Very proud of you. But it's interesting. By Clandestine, I was able to just be an actor, and that was a fun new experience for me.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I think we all enjoy when we talk about, we have our moments of talking about Feenix, is the fact that, there has been growth, and we've been able to have people like you, be there along the road with us, from building a set of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, sure. And you and I even met before that in like '99. Sure.
Right.
So and then
we were just people in the theater group,
Yeah, yeah. And to go from that to now having this great great collaboration. So yeah, I know it's something we all enjoy and appreciate, and it was one of the main focal points when we set out to do this, is that we wanted to have that type of relationship with people. So do you feel that having that type of relationship is helpful for a writer?
I met when I was a reporter. I met Richard Price. At that time, he had written The Wanderers and a few of his other early novels. Um, Unbeknownst to me, he was researching clockers at the time. But we got, they asked me to sit with him and talk with him. Actually, the borough president had asked me if I would sit with E.L. Doctorow. And I went and I read all of E.L.'s stuff, and I got ready, and I took notes and all that stuff. And they placed me at this door, so when E.L. Doctorow came in, I would, I would be there for him. And he saw me and looked up, and the woman who was asking me to help was the type at the top of the stairs, and she had killer legs that E.L. Doctorow noticed, and he no longer could see me. So E.L., and he was older at the time, God bless him, but he attached himself to that woman, and they just got message to me, okay, we're sorry, would you hang out with the other writer, Richard Price? So I found him in the audience, sitting there, making no fuss, just watching, waiting, and we got talking, and I asked him about this. I asked him about writing, and here's the advice he gave me. He says, the thing you have to make peace with is that it's a long, lonely road. If you're going to be a novelist, you have to sit your butt in the chair and write. And that's the huge difference between that and what I do when I get to work with Feenix Films. Feenix Films and film as in its natural state is a collaborative process. Sketch comedy was a collaborative process. So you serve the story. When you're in the collaborative process, you give and take as needed. When you're in the novel process, close the door and and just keep working. So it depends on what you're, what kind of art you're doing.
Now, Chris, how did you go from being like a reporter, then to a novelist, and then to a screenwriter? And what do you find besides one being sort of a lonely road and one being collaborative? How do you go from one to the other?
Be willing to learn, and I think when I was young, I was sick a lot. So comic books and novels. I have another surprise for you from the early 70s. These were the reprints of the Conan novels, and this one was this is another E.J. Corvette special. But I would read a lot of that stuff, and it fired up my imagination. So I always just wanted to keep doing that, and I think if you don't grow, you die. So I tried not to say no to any of this stuff. And Rich Ramirez was really great at that, because I covered him as a stand-up when I was a reporter, and he pulled me into his world, and every time I told him, nah, I don't know how to do that, he's like, come on, you learn. And I learned to open up and not be as narrow-minded as I was, initially as a reporter. And that was it. That's who I was going to be. I saw myself as Jimmy Breslin or someone like that, which was hilarious. Never got up to that level. So guys like Rich Ramirez, who were, he was one of the very early independent. He did everything himself. He managed himself, booked himself, created shows for himself, and for those around him. He imbued me with an early idea of the independent spirit. And the people that I have stayed with have been independents. I did do some training with the New School and with some screenwriting courses, and I kept finding people there who were very enamored of the Hollywood system. I got invited to do one level, and then I did another level of the screenwriting. I won't say what it was because I don't want to get sued. And my script got picked for development. And this guy brings me to this midtown, hotel with a eatery in there, and they're playing some music in the background, and we're talking about this script. And the waiter comes over, and the guy says, I'll have this, and I want this freshly squeezed, and that over this. And he says, and you'll turn the music off. And I'm from the Bronx. What the hell is this guy being an asshole? And the waiter says, we can't, it's for everybody. And he threw a fit. Low volume fit, but a fit. And right there I said, I want nothing to do with this guy professionally. I said thanks for the eggs or whatever, and got out of there as soon as possible. And I never returned another call, and I know it may have burned a bridge or a chance or whatever. I just didn't want to work with that kind of mentality that, whatever my creativity has earned me, I'm going to use as a sledgehammer on other people, And Rich and Sal Soul and Feenix Films have not been like that, One of the reasons I independently publish is because you get to choose to work humanely if that's what's within you. And I believe that very importantly. I mean, I have another career so that I can make the choices that let me sleep at night, I hope that answered your question. I kind of went off.
No, I think that's good. I think it's interesting to be you're talking about Dante's Inferno, and you're right there at the precipice with that the guy in the restaurant, and it was almost like are you going to drink the Kool-Aid or not? And you chose not to, and I think that's a difficult decision. I think anyone who's creative and wants to make a living doing what they want to do versus what they have to do, I think probably wonders what they would do in that instance. Do you follow the wholesomeness of your do-it-yourself pursuits, or do you kind of say, well, I'll deal with this?
Yeah, and I don't know that my decisions were the best for me. I don't, they're what I lived with. But as recently as this week, I was listening to Steve Carell be interviewed by Stephen Colbert, and they worked together for 25 years or so, starting out in Second City, and they only got paid $75 a show. And they only got a couple of shows a week, so they were starving, and they would take anything else they could. There's that school of thought as well. So I don't want to come off as high and mighty. This is what worked for me. If there's anything, I would say you have to be true to your artistic calling. This is what worked for me. So, but I respect those two gentlemen. So whatever they did to get to where they are, God bless them.
Yeah.
Well, and I think there is something to be said for the approach of having a day job. I know it's a sort of a tangent, but I read this list. I can't remember the list, but it's something about the ways to achieve success in the artistic world. And one of the points said, always have a day job. And what they meant by that was, even if you are the most successful at what you do, don't hinge what you're doing on the money you're making from it.
Right.
And I think that can apply to anybody at any level of their career, but I think it's especially encouraging for people like us and even below and starting out to know that it's no crime. Not only is it not a crime to have a day job, you're probably going to benefit greatly from it in every way possible. So all those people throwing advice at you with their infinite wisdom of, quit your day job and just pursue, you can say that's one way, but that's not the only way.
Yeah, I've known another guy, a writer. I don't know if you can see this. I have a lot of props tonight. This is Blackjack. I write some anthologies with the creator of Blackjack. His name is Alex Simmons. I've known him since '85, and he always tried to put his breadwinning from his art, and he would get other jobs to, offset that. But it was, he was always afraid of getting a career and getting comfortable and putting that by the side. And you and I know a lot of people, I'm sure, who did get comfortable and stopped playing guitar or stopped doing this. Mm-hmm. You have to find what works for you. I came from a working class family. You worked or you felt uncomfortable. I've been working since I was about 10 years old. So for me, a day job and then burning the midnight oil and writing, either late at night or early. It's been about 3 a.m., 4 a.m. since the children were born. that's what, you have to define what works for you. But I think the thing that cuts the wheat from the chaff is, if there's something that can take you away from your art, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it. Whether it's Colbert and Carell taking any other gigs, or Alex getting real thin financially and fighting through it because that's what he believed, or Ramirez hustling to create his career, or what Feenix Films does, or what we do. As the thing that we all have in common is that we don't deny the muse, we don't deny the art, and we find a way to get it done. And that's what I respect. All right, what have you produced? That's great. Let's take a look at that.